A point you had made is that you hadn't seen people get addicted to psychedelic mushrooms, but
Yeah.
I have seen people that do way too many psychedelics
Oh,
kind of look fried, like they're
yeah.
burnt out.
Yeah. They're trying to have 20-hour phone calls with God. I hope your brain's fried out. That's what you get for being a gluttonous pig. Yeah. Yeah,
That's a
no,
good point.
a lot of people that take entire dropper bottles full of acid for fun. I think they're fucking stupid. I think you get everything coming to you. The problem is I am someone who the drug education is wrong on a lot of levels. And I don't mean that it's a bad thing to have. I think it's just factually incorrect on a lot of levels. I was also taught that smoking weed would kill me. It didn't do that. And so I trusted nothing else because if I can't trust the safest, most baseline thing that the culture's agreed upon and has long-term history of human use, I don't know what else I can. So that's definitely wrong. If used responsibly, you even then, it's not for everyone. That's for sure. I think outbreaks of schizophrenia would be rampant really quickly if you were to legalize all those psychedelic drugs. I think people will break their minds for sure. I don't believe it's a fair game in that everyone has a good experience with it in that way. It's not meant to. It is not for everyone, and I don't know what determines that. I would do almost anything to avoid my mother having to go through almost any of those experiences, to be honest. She doesn't need that. It's not for her. I was introduced to mysticism at a very early age. I was raised in a church to some degree, I kind of finally have accepted, and then had a very bad falling out with faith early on because I more or less lived with my grandma who ran a church. So I was there listening to her and Bible stories like every day. And then she passed away at an early age. And so that left a huge void in my life. And so I became very explorative, I guess, afterwards. And yeah.
You make a good point that not everything is for everybody.
Mm-mm.
And there's a conceit that all people are equal in every way, when the only way we're really equal is in the eyes of God. And that's different. And we're supposed to be equal
Very.
before the law. We're not, but we're supposed to be. And something as simple as taking this mushroom might just wreck someone, for one person, forever, but another person,
Absolutely.
their life might be immeasurably improved by it. And
The
there's no
only
way
thing
of
it
telling.
does is it guarantees that a change will happen. And that's not good. It is in neutral. It is very neutral.
Not every change is a good change. We're like Obama campaigned on hope and change. He never said it was going to be for the better.
Oh.
He never said this is going to be a positive change for America. No, he just wanted to fundamentally transform it. He said that repeatedly. He didn't lie. He wanted to change it. He did. Change for change's sake is chaos. No one
Yeah,
can
yeah, that
swim in
is the
those
nature of
waters.
change is chaos. Yeah, absolutely. That
Yeah.
is wholeheartedly believe that.
Now, if you don't mind, could
Mhm.
you share with us your experiences with psychedelic
Yeah,
material?
for sure. So, hmm, I don't know where it started. It was kind of always there, I guess, because not in my life. My mother was actually a very middle class, puritanical kind of woman. My dad, he did some drugs in college, but he wasn't like that at all. I don't actually really know how it got introduced. Just from, I think, acid being a part of kind of punk rock culture to some degree. It's similar in lineage progression, and then there was also a lot of the doomy metals, like the Sabbaths. I could see having an influence there. How it started, I don't know. I got really into all kinds of whatever would shift my perception. I've never been interested in uppers or downers, really. I mean, MDMA is one thing, but it. I was using that as a crutch to get through life for a period of time. Psychoactive materials such as acid and all of its off brand analogs like 2CA, 2CB, all those kind of weird research chemicals that no one should know the names of, the DOBs, that kind of stuff. I was really into those probably just as I was getting out of high school was about that time frame. I was having a major crisis of faith, though, because I tried to cover the loss of my grandmother with womanizing, which was an awful thing to do. I was a scummy douchebag dude, but then that wasn't making me happy. I was just getting into meaningless relationships with women and trying to feel good. And then I was like, wait, I got a problem with upstairs, so this is how I'm gonna try and do it on my terms, but that's never how that works. Haha, what I
It
would
happens
find
to
in
you.
right, chasing the spiral of meaningfulness in life. So I went from cheap research drugs, because that's what you could get in Alaska at that point in time. It was easy for people to bring blotter paper and like notebooks and that kind of a thing, and it would just get distributed that way, which is strange because my area of rainforest I live in is very, very verdant for mycology. Not something you see very often up here, though. It really happened when I went down south and moved to Colorado, is when I got introduced to the variety pack and milieu of drug culture. And I really hung out in what was, I saw, the modern hippie culture, this countercultural thing, typically revolving around the Red Rocks area of, going to Base Nectar concerts, frying your fucking face off. It was stupid. I was a stupid raver kid, is what it really came down to, because I was being a rebel badass, doing what I wanted, doing the wrong thing, and whatever. I had a good time doing it. But then I had a really bad experience with acid, and it changed everything. So I have not done it since that moment, because I had a complete meltdown where I was hearing these like angelic voices yelling like LSD, LSD, LSD all around me. I was seeing like my cat in 15 dimensions, like through a bug eye, and it was awful, like 15, 16-hour experience. Horrible time. Took some time off from substances for a while after that, or tried to. It turned into a lot of like day drinking and me being a loser. But as I realized that I was searching for something in that haystack, I knew there was a needle or a nugget that I was actually looking for. I just felt compelled towards it, especially because I had always listened to Terrence McKenna and people like that. And so I realized, like, hey, this whole responsibility and actually taking this stuff seriously, there might be something to that. And so I really got into, I don't know, talking with the old heads realistically. Instead of moving from the party, I started talking to these old pot farmers off in the mountains and that kind of stuff, and getting their mysticism secondhand and that kind of crap. That's where I was really introduced to DMT and mushrooms and that kind of a thing. And I have found it to be an integral but infrequent part of my life. It's not something I chase. It will randomly fall in my lap here and there, and that's when I know that it needs to happen, I guess. I don't do drugs often, as I might speak about it very cleanly and openly and with advocacy. It's like yearly, if that. It's really not very often, besides smoking weed, but that's different. I just like being a pothead.
Well, it's physically impossible to OD from weed. The only people that ever died from weed were allergic. And
Yeah,
there are very few of those people.
very, very few.
You could eat 100 milligram gummy and just pass out. Worst
My
is going to happen.
favorite way I actually advocate use, which is not how most people like it. My favorite is like a 2-week tolerance break, and then you just destroy your brain on a fat gummy. Oh, baby. Oh, baby, you get me going.
So, did you ever see the Clockwork Elves?
Yes, I don't.
Well, you saw something, it sounds
Oh,
like.
yes, yes, for sure. I
Okay.
don't, my experiences differed to the point where I don't like the term clockwork elves. I know what is trying to be conveyed, but it doesn't capture it, and people have latched on to a symbol that is not representative of the other thing. I don't know how else to say that, because clockwork elves gives how we might understand clockwork, not space-time clockwork. That's a very different thing. It's mm,
This is the problem that Graham
uh,
Hancock articulated, is trying to explain to someone who hasn't been under DMT's effects what that's like. And if someone as skilled a wordsmith as Graham Hancock can't do it, it's okay. We can let you
that's
have a
true.
pass. But if you can do it, I'm interested to
I
hear.
can, I can. I'm trying to think of the right word. I might be wrong on this, but it gets the point across. If you are familiar with maybe high dosages of edibles or something like that. When you've been too stoned and things get wavier, you get a little visual patterns from mushrooms or these kind of things. I don't know. If you've ever experienced that, it is almost that, and then the world becomes alive in a sense that everything, I'm not doing it justice. I feel like there is a connection towards everythingness that you were almost describing earlier, how we would have that connection, but like that towards existence itself is, I guess, a good way of explaining it. And then there's the other thing at the end of the water slide, and I don't know how to describe that. There is a sense of movement and propulsion, and then there are living psychic entities on the other side. I don't see, I'm going into woo woo mumbo jumbo trying to explain.
Use the terms that you feel best describe what you're talking about. Don't worry about it being woo woo, mumbo jumbo, whatever.
Okay.
Give it
There
to us
is a
straight.
phantasmagoric and illusory circus that lays at the furthest edges beyond humans' ability to comprehend its perceptions. There is a different modality. It's not just hacking your brain to change the color of your Game Boy screen. It's a different programming that you fall into. But my experiences with DMT, and that's kind of a landmark feature that isn't there with other drugs, is I don't like speaking for others. I have never had the experience that I change so much. It is me as raw and in the flesh and unpeeled. I am not a babbling idiot unable to comprehend the spaghetti brain when you're too loaded on drugs. Everyone that's done any drugs knows too loaded. You know what that feels like. That is not present there. It is clarity of thought and an ability to freely communicate with the honesty of someone just born. Ugh, that sounds weird, but
I like
I'm
it.
going with it. Yeah, there's a
Unfettered by
unfiltered.
conventions and deceit.
Yeah, there's no dogma, there's no standard set because you don't know how to operate in an environment like this. You are a newborn babe in that sense. But it's so unlike anything familiar to the modality in which we operate. Maybe there is the sense of touch, but it's not touch as we know it. There you're seeing, but the only way I could explain it is my experiences is I've seen in 360-degree vision almost as if my eyes were the shape of a donut. So I was seeing inwards at self as outwards at the thing. There's also have always gotten this feeling of compression, for lack of a better term, like the accordion that gets shrunk down a little bit. I don't know how to explain that, but
Did it feel like, to use perhaps a crude visual
yeah.
illustration to help me understand it? Have you seen the movie Interstellar? That's what
I
I meant.
have seen Interstellar, yes.
Interstellar. And when Matthew McConaughey's character went into the black hole.
That was not my experience, not in the slightest.
Okay.
It was a circus. It was so interactive. It is the circus motif repeats itself very often through the psychedelic literature, and I see why, because there's nothing really better to compare it to, but it's also not like a conventional circus kind of thing. There is a playful attitude that the universe itself seems to take on and manifest. And maybe that's why I'm drawn towards the Dying Earth books now that I'm thinking about it, is in an odd way. There is that same, are you going to press the button? The button's there to press, go check it out. And then if you do press the button, it will interact with you and shape and change and move. And it doesn't become what you want it to be. It's not some mind power super psychic thing. It's interactive with other modality of nature, and it's not, the thing itself is sentient, if that makes sense. It's so hard to explain because it's like the universe itself understands that it's in on some kind of game that you don't understand, but you don't even know what you're looking at? I'm so getting burned at the cross for this.
Why? There's
Is
there's
this not
whole
absolute heresy?
there's whole books talking about how early Christianity might have been a mushroom cult.
Oh,
Uh,
like Brian Murray Rescue's stuff?
There you go. But let me see if I can construct this scenario and you tell me if this is close to what you're talking about. Because, like I said, I haven't had this experience and I never trusted LSD enough to
You
do it.
shouldn't. It's sketchy. I don't trust it ever anymore.
Like
Never
if I
again.
was somehow I was in Switzerland where it's legal to use medical grade LSD as part of a guided psychological therapy under a psychiatrist, then I would trust that stuff, but they wouldn't give it to me. So I've stayed away from it. And Terrence McKenna would probably go along with at least some of this. So you find out that you were connected to everything in some way. And everything seems more alive than when you're in your normal confined senses in your head. So that kind of speaks
Yes.
to an animism, a spirit in everything.
Very, very much.
And then the circus that you're describing, I doubt that there's like big tents and circular
Nothing.
horses. What you might be getting at is how interactive all of those spirits now are.
And it's in motion. Everything is in motion and moving, and everything is performing a task or something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so you're not feeling it in like a tactile sense. You're not necessarily smelling it. You're feeling it in a psychic sense.
You can, though, because it is a plunging of reality. Because, like, there's no way to deny that when you intake DMT, that your soul and way you experience, I'll just say your five senses because it's the easiest way to relate it, get teleported to a different realm. Well, your body just kind of goes, limp, or some people get kind of twitchy and yell and shit, but that's a different thing. It's very much you have this feeling that you are there. It is as real as reality itself can be. It is not. There's nothing that lets you think like, oh, this is me hallucinating. This is how my table is being viewed through some alternate perception. It's not like everything gets overlaid. It is a complete board wipe of the whiteboard and something new gets drawn just for a little bit. And then it gets wiped again and you have to remember what was on that whiteboard. And it's so hard because you don't really get to pull things back. I can give you impressions, but not details. So like spinning, gyrating, colorful, bejeweled, sparkling, these are the words that come to mind. Bismuth is something I've linked to quite heavily because of repeated motifs. It's a crystal if you're not familiar. It's this weird kind of oil slick colored rainbow crystal that comes in all these weird geometric infolding patterns. And I don't know, that's something I often relate to because of this. But everything is animated, as you were saying. Everything. It is not, and it's almost that it is animated through a oneness too. Does that make sense?
Yes. There seems to be a section of this existence that you're in at that stage that has its own rules, but you perceived that there was a border where there were different rules.
Yes, there is not a single possible way that someone could ever think, Earth sure looks funny at this point in time. It's culture shock is the word that comes to mind. Strangely enough, it is. You feel there is it's not a hopeless or a lost thing though either.
Oh, okay.
It is because it feels there's familiarity. A depth of familiarity. That is one thing a lot of people come back to, as well as myself, is like, that's so reassuring to know that that's there. I don't know how else to explain it. It's reassuring at a deeply spiritual level.
So even though you didn't see it with your physical eyes, you know what you saw to be true. Is that correct?
Yes, you see it, and it's hard to say not through your eyes. It's just not through your earth eyes. It's through, like, you see it as much as you can, as I see you, I see my computer and my books and everything else. It's as there and as solidified, even though everything is morphing and animated and moving and shifting and bleep. Bleep is apparently the word.
Well, maybe it is in the parlance of the place that you're describing. And in case our audience happens to still be with us at this point, the folks that aren't into such conversation, let me hearken to the Bible, because the apostles, including Paul, who never met Jesus in person, each of them saw something. They may have seen Jesus with their own eyes or not, But later on, they had a vision that was so real to them, they were willing to go to the ends of the earth, often to incredibly awful and grisly ends, because they believed what they saw to be so true, even though they probably didn't see it with their eyes. They had a vision of something. Well, a vision of something. The apostles, I doubt they were sitting there twiddling their thumbs and thinking, my revelation is that Christ came back and I think he appeared before me, so I'm going to go do some stuff now. No, no. They saw him however they did it and then dedicated their lives to it. It made that big of an impact to them. Because remember, Christ rebuked them for being lily-livered cowards numerous times, but it impacted them so hard, they chose to face death because of what they knew to be true. So you don't have to do the drugs to have the visions, but once you have the vision of something that you know, like this is undeniable, it changes you. And so this is one way you might be able to do that. I don't recommend people just
It's not my
willy-nilly go out and do
recommended
it.
way. I had really big problems with a really deep falling from faith early on, but this is also the thing that led me back on the right track. Because it was like, okay, you've seen the stained glass windows beyond reality, cool. You still got upper management daddy issues. What you gonna do about that? Like, oh wow, now I have to confront this. Like I waded through all the bullshit my own way and it led me nowhere and left me with the most real of questions. And that's a strange place to be, is when you are in the most unfamiliar of places, like rainbow chasms, when you're left with, well, I still have these questions of faith, and you kind of have to like either come to grips with all of that or not, you know?